Okay, so it's Wednesday question day. I didn't get to the other classes ones before this. Let's check these out real quick. See how this is going. Here's Monet.
All right. So my question for this week is actually a problem I ran into when I was doing the motion project. So when I went to go copy each of the different round balls, I did what was said in the videos, Command C and then Command V. But when I went to go drag over the bouncing ball, it moved like so, which my guess is because of the anchor point. Because when I would hit play, it would jump all the way back. So I just wanted to verify that that is the anchor point or if it is something else, and how can I fix that in the future, because what I did to get the project done was I just copied and just redid each of the balls. So I just want to know if my hypothesis is right, that that is because my anchor point is off, and if so, I'll know for next time. Thank you.
Monet, that's a good hypothesis, but it's wrong. Let's see here. In a second, after After Effects launches, when you the first rule here is only set the keyframes you need. Don't keyframe a bunch of stuff that you don't need to animate. Okay, so with the bouncing and squishing balls, we were only moving in one direction, which is what? The Y, only up and down, right? And so when I did that both times, in order to, come on, animate it with the Bezier handles, I separated dimensions. You know, at this point, we realized like you almost always separate dimensions when you're working in After Effects. And then I would turn off, I probably did it really quickly, turn off the stopwatch on the X so that there are no X keyframes, right? Because even if I'm not setting any X keyframes, just the fact I set a position keyframe and then, come on, am I gonna be able to launch this? Even though I set that, because then if you have X keyframes, it will snap back to that position. I think I can do the same thing in Cinema 4D. All right, so here's a ball. And I'll just super simple keyframes, right? Because this isn't a software problem, it's just how keyframes work. Right, so if I grab all of these and set a position keyframe, right, which is what happens essentially in After Effects, and then over here we'll go up. And I'll set keyframes there. I'll set keyframes for all of them. And then we'll come back down. Right, and so I have this. Right, and so this is fine. I'm keyframing, I can get in here and tune this, right? It's just doing the regular easing right now. But the problem comes if I want to duplicate this. And in that case, I can go ahead and copy and paste this ball and move it. But then if I hit play, both of the balls are on top of each other. Anna, do you know why that happened? So because even though there's nothing changing on the X, there's an X keyframe. And so the program will let you move the ball E, there we go, right? Because it's designed that way. But unless I do something to the keyframes, when I hit play, it'll snap back because it starts reading the position off of the keyframes rather than whatever position I was just at. In addition to that, see, I'm on my other laptop here and After Effects is not launching. Let me try quitting Photoshop, freeing up some resources. And so you want to get rid of your X keyframes. You want to turn off the stopwatch on the X, and then you'll be able to copy and paste and slide them left and right, in this case, so that they don't all snap back to the same position. That was a good question. Zach Friday, the student with the catchiest name this semester.
My question was on the squash and stretch. I was wondering if everybody had any tips because it looks good until right about here, and it starts to get that sort of blockiness around the bottom edges. And I was wondering if everybody had any tips for moving it around. Thank you.
Okay, Zach, it looks like you have the echo on, right? And so the echo effect, what's the animation name for stretching stuff out like that? That's right, smearing, right? So the echo does the smear. It just looks like your handles are a little weird. You gotta turn off the echo to sort of tune your shape a little bit more there. Come on, After Effects, what is the deal here? Wait, am I good now? Oh, there we go. Good. Yeah. Zach, you just need to get in there and change that. Turn off your echo, and then also let's get the sphere in here. And check your path points. Some of these may be off, but it's hard to tell with the echo on. So, I mean, I have the echo on for my final, but if you pull these Bezier handles too far, then everything gets pretty tough to wrangle, right? In general, you don't want Bezier handles that far out because it's going to make the math for the smoothing get a little strange at points, and you'll end up with things like that. Cool. Good question, Zach. Let's see who else we got here. Michael.
Oh, I have a question. How do I fix this? Because I don't know what I did or what's going on, but whenever I start something, like start a new one, that's what pops up. I don't know if there's a setting that I pressed by mistake or what's going on, but I haven't been able to finish my assignment from last week and the assignment for this week because of this black screen right here. And I looked up many different ways on how to.
Let's see what he has here. So Michael, yeah, again, right here, turn down one of your audio inputs and you won't sound like a robot. That'll help that. You got to check the driver first. I would re-download your graphics card drivers. So if you go to NVIDIA drivers, if you have an NVIDIA card, which you should, I believe, if you come on here, there's actually a yeah, so if you download the GeForce experience, then this can directly search what card is in your computer, and then you can update the driver. The other thing is that sometimes there's this bug in After Effects where it will look black until you move the playhead a little bit, and then things will show up here. Try that as well. Let me know on Slack as soon as you try that to see if it shows back up.
Hi Casey, hi class. My question for this week is pretty straightforward. I'm just wondering how, and if I can at all, I'm sure I can, how to open this panel for an already created solid. This panel again, so I can here, for example, change the color of it. So I already have this background from my bounce animation. How do I change that color? For example, I want it to be a little bit lighter. I couldn't quite find the option to do that. Another question that I have is, how do I make this color? So for example, I pick a color, right? I pick a solid and I pick a color. I want it to be this reddish color. I hit OK, and I make it. And now, what if I wanted to have the exact same color on all of these comps, all of these setups? I want to have the exact same background color on all of them. Aside from just copying the same layer on different comps, is there a way to maybe like favorite this color or save it so it's just easier to pick? Yeah, I'm just wondering. I know I can probably do the eye draw part as well, but yeah, I'm just wondering if you can save that color. And that's kind of it for me. I think I'm doing pretty well. Thank you, Casey. Bye-bye.
Okay, so the solid, if you make a new solid, this is kind of strange. You can pick the color real easy when you make it, but then you're like, how do I change this? It's actually up here. You got to go back up to here it is, layer solid settings. This allows you to get back to the one that you currently have selected, and then you can change the color of that one. And then it's not in the drop down, right? In here? No. Yeah, because it saves them in here. If you double click this, no, that doesn't do it either. Yep, you got to go up to that solid settings. As far as your other question, you usually wouldn't want to put the same solid in the background for each one. You would want to put them all together like we do when we composite the movies. You know, we lay them all out, one after the other, in order to make the big movie with all the scenes. And if you wanted the same color background for all of those scenes, you would put the solid in there versus in each one. That way, if you wanted to change the background for the entire thing, you would just change that one solid versus having to go into each comp and change it. Does that make sense? Okay. These are pretty good. Okay, Madison, I don't think you have any audio. It looks like maybe you're asking something about motion blur. Instead of the smearing. It's tough to say. So check the check your upload before you send it up so that there's definitely audio in there. So include that in next week's. There's Max.
Howdy. For my motion principles assignment, I was having issues with using an echo effect on the adjustment layer when I started working on it. But of course, when I try to recreate it, it works exactly as expected. The adjustment layer wasn't applying to the other objects, even though they were below, so I'm not sure what the problem was there. But that's really all I have for that assignment, so I'll do it. Thank you.
Okay, so should work now, I think, right? The smear on the adjustment layer. Yeah, it happens to me too, Max, as far as, you know, it works one time and then you're not the first student. A lot of students, you know, stuff doesn't work and then I show up and then it works. The computers just want to do the work for me. I don't know.
The Center for the Camera Control. While I was working on the project, I just completely couldn't remember how to do it. And I kept trying to like press push buttons and figure it out that way, and I just couldn't. So I was wondering if you could just give me like a reminder on what the button or like combination of buttons or keys is. Thanks.
Did you guys catch what she said? What did she say?
I just have a real quick question with the Center for the Camera Control. While I was working on the project,
Oh, camera
I just
control. Camera control. Michelle, do you remember? How do you move the camera around? Anna, you remember? What? You were doing it. I've seen you do it. Where's your mouse? You need a mouse. You're making it so much harder for yourself on a trackpad. It's impossible on a trackpad. Christine, you remember which button is moving the camera around? Like being able to look around? No, the keyboard shortcut. What's that? Yep, Alt or Option, right? It's Option on Mac. You're on Mac, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's Option or Alt. So Option left is orbit, Option middle, move, and Alt right button, zoom. Or, you know, most people use the scroll wheel. I do that most of the time too, but it can take a long time to zoom that way. And so, you know, doing it this way, you can definitely zoom further, faster. Cool. And then, who was that? That was Kaylee. Kaylee, your mic, like I said to somebody else, make sure only one audio source is on the recording.
I just have a question. Whether I can move this here. I know that there's a little knob that you can switch those out, but I'm wondering if I can go further. If I had more stuff here, obviously I don't, but, and I'm all zoomed out. My screen is extremely small because I have this tiny laptop. And I know about the tilde, I believe it's called. I know about that, but I'm wondering if there's any way to just, you know, bring this out further. I'm used to movable panels from like Photoshop and Bridge. So if you have any feedback, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Good question. So all of these things over here, you can get rid of them. These are all columns. If you right click, you can say hide this, hide this, hide this, till you get down to just the name there. And then that'll give you way more real estate to move left and right. But then you have to right click to get that stuff back if you need it, right? So the different modes and switches and all that business, you can bring it back over there. But you can get rid of that to really clean things up. That's a good question. Ron. Whoa.
Hello. So my question for the week is actually about the last question that I asked on Monday's stream in the chat. And I think the stream was cut off before you could actually answer it. And my question was how long it took for movie CGs to be rendered out. Because I know you mentioned that you knew a fact about it, but the stream actually cut off before it could finish. So, thank you.
A really long time. Yeah, the fact I was talking about was how long it took to render Gravity, the movie Gravity. What did I say last time? It was like since the Egyptian dynasty it would have taken to render Gravity. Have you guys seen Gravity or no? Okay, so it's not an animated, it's not a cartoon movie, but it's set in space, so there's no, they didn't go to space to film it. It's all computer graphics, except for Sandra Bullock and George Clooney is in it for a second. It's a great movie. And so a lot of it is, that's right, did this one have that weird trailer? So all the outside in space shots are all completely computer generated, right? She did acting, but all of this, had to be rendered. And you can see like the fidelity of the imagery is incredible, really great. There's like a catastrophe in space and things fall apart. But yeah, a very, very long time. That's why they have render farms. That's what I was saying, Ron, is that you need a whole bunch of computers to really render out a lot of things at the same time. Here's Griffin.
Mr. Faria, so my question is actually relating to the Cinema 4D project. See, I'm having trouble with the globe right here because every time I do the world map thing, it doesn't change at all. So I was wondering if you maybe had some kind of way of helping me out with that. Thank you.
Hold on. Do we see what he drug it onto there? He has the material tag. Okay, I can't quite see where you're dragging it, Griffin. But remember, the material tags evaluate from right to left, right? And so if I have this, it's one color. There we go. So if I put this on the object, and I put this on the object, right? The white covers up the red, because this is the top, right? If you start, there are instances where you want to stack materials, but this is the top. And so it covers up. So maybe you drug it on here, and there's another material over here that's covering it up, right? Because if I were to do this, then I see it in red. I think that might be it. Although it's hard to tell, send me a shot of your whole object list.
Hi. So I think this is the project that actually has given me the most trouble so far. I didn't really have any major questions about the process or anything. It was more After Effects just being difficult, I guess. I think the part where I struggled the most was, the squash and stretch, specifically with the one where the Bezier handles were used. It took me a long time to figure out how to get to that point, and I don't really know what happened, but I just kept trying and eventually it worked. So I'm not quite sure what I missed, but I figured it out. I think the thing I just need to work on more is like thinking about how things would look in real life. Like the animation of the squash and stretch, this one, I think it could be a little more realistic, in like the way gravity works. I think it's just like little things like that I can work on, like making sure the bounces look accurate and stuff like that. Just little tweaks that I think I can practice more. But other than that, it was a fun project and I enjoyed it.
Cool, Chloe. Well, you're gonna get to
Right.
practice it plenty.
Uh-huh.
That's for sure.
So, I think this is the project that actually has given me the most trouble so far. I didn't really have any major.
So the thing about the Bezier handles that's tough is you got to make sure that this is selected. So is everybody getting the feel for that? Like the After Effects tools work differently depending on what you currently have selected. And so that, and it's kind of opaque. Like there's no feedback in the interface to sort of let you know what mode you would be in. I mean, if you pay attention here a little bit, you see that if I come back up here, those dots go away, but now I click on it and those dots appear, but that's a pretty subtle change, right? Now that those are there, now if I'm in the move tool, I can move these around. But if I'm up here and go to move around, it's just, I always end up clicking on the whole object, right? And so you gotta make sure this is selected in order to change the actual path. Does that make sense, Anna? Okay. Yeah. One more.
Hello everyone. I'm having an interesting problem with Adobe After Effects. As you see here, everything looks about normal, but for some reason, I play, and I am playing right now, as you can see, nothing is moving. But if I stop, I guess it leaves it to where it stops. It leaves it to where it stop. Hey everyone, future me here. I just wanted to specify a little on this question, just in case it gets a little confusing. As you see here, as soon as I play the animation, it freezes and doesn't play. When I press stop though, it moves to a random spot like it was playing. I just wanted to see if this was happening to anyone else or if it was just me. Okay, sorry to bother you. Right back to past me. So the only thing I found is to close and reopen it, but I don't know if there's any other way to fix that, so if you can, let me know. Thank you.
All right, Adrian, I appreciate the production value on this question. Yeah, man, I am not in love with After Effects. I'm looking forward to the day when this is not the main 2D program we use, but it's the industry standard, and so it is what it is. That just happens. To be honest, I researched that a bunch too, and like, if After Effects is open for too long, or if I don't know what it is. Neither is anyone else I've been able to find out. That the space bar stops triggering play. And I just restart, and that takes care of it most of the time. I wish I could say exactly what it is that does it, but have you guys run into this, where the space bar stopped playing? You ran into that, Michelle? Yeah, but does it work now? You restarted? Yeah, like. So, yeah, I mean, I'll rant about Adobe a lot over the course of the semester. I just don't feel like they have the resources allocated to these programs in the way that certainly would be more useful to me and the people who use them. And as far as I understand, making this stuff isn't even the main Adobe business, right? There's this whole other side of Adobe that's like a business to business, and that's their main way of making money. And so this stuff is just kind of like along for the ride sometimes, which is infuriating because it's the way a lot of people make their living. So yeah, that's one of those ones that really seems like it should have been fixed, but I can't tell you. So just restart, and I think it will work. Awesome. Questions? We got them all. I'll put that all up there. Please tell me this stream is good. Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah, you guys are here. Yeah, Ron, some of the volume may be just your mic, turning up the gain on your mic. Yeah, it's hard to, the questions, yeah, I don't think I have the question volume is not going directly into the recording. So I'll see if I can do something about that later. Cool. Okay, Monday, we did all the C4D party stuff, right? Not a super hard assignment, but we went through probably about half, 2/3 of those things about how to set everything up. And that one, we're really just having fun with the C4D setup, right? So the other thing that we're doing this week is sort of expanding that, but giving everybody a lot more room to be creative. So if we look at the assignment somewhere, is making your own scenes. And so I want you guys to make 2 scenes. We're going to make one realistic one and one surreal one. And we can leverage the asset browser to do this. So here's an example. I made one realistic scene, just sort of generic office sort of setup here. We got a desk and some stuff. And then one surreal scene where you can do something that's stranger. We'll talk about surrealism in some more detail. But I have 2 videos here to watch about realism in art and surrealism in art. And both of these, for right now, we're not animating them. The Cinema 4D Party is an animated scene, right? You have to do some things with the keyframes there. But both of these are just going to be still shots for now. We're just sort of building some worlds with some of the parts that are available. And this is way easier now to map these kind of things out because in 24, we have this right here. And so this is the asset browser. And this is great in that there's this entire library of objects and materials and a bunch of other things that are available in Cinema. And you don't need to download all of them. You can just sort of download the ones that you want to use in your scene. And so this is supposed to be like a box or a drawer. And if you open it up, it's a whole library of things, and it is searchable, right? And so say we want to bring in a bench in here. And so that gives me a couple benches. Whichever bench I would want, I can double click. It downloads just that bench. And now I have the bench here in my scene. Let's say I want a sign as well. I can look for sign. You can see what I got here. Let's say this yield sign. I'll double click on that. And everything is to scale as well, right? So it's like stock art, but stock meshes. These are all in here. And this will give us some practice moving things around, arranging things in a scene. And you can do a lot here as far as making the things and also really pre-visualizing a lot of different ideas doing this kind of work. So this is the asset browser right there. It's all searchable. If you want to look some more, the main menu, the main folder to look in is not C4D objects, but just objects. That's where all the meshes are. You can see that they're pretty well categorized. All right, let's look at sure. So here's a pot. Let's get a flower pot. And in addition to this, if you look at the assignment, just like the Cinema 4D Party, I've given you guys, I have both of my examples. They are both here for you to download, and you can open up the Cinema 4D file and look at what I did and everything for both my realistic scene and surrealistic scene. Then I gave you a blank starting point where I turned a bunch of things on and sort of set it up. And so let's download that one. This is a lot like the template from the Cinema 4D Party. There's not stuff in there, but it has the general studio setup. And so if I look at that here, here we go. So here's the blank template for you guys. This is a lot like the setup. This is how a lot of my Cinema 4D files end up looking. There's the studio null, where all the lights and cameras and everything else are. And then right now there's just a cube in it. You don't need to keep the cube. You can get rid of the cube. But that's there. So over here, we look at this. We've got the camera. And then, Anna, what tag is this? That one right there. Protection. What does that do? That's right. Locks it down so it doesn't move. And so if I try to move my camera right now, I can't move it. I think that's going to make it hard to work. How do I actually work and look around in this, Christine? Right. Got to click out of the camera, which is this right here. So I'm looking through the camera. No, I'm not. And so now I can move around. I can see where everything is. I've got 2 lights and the backdrop object. Right? And so in general, you can leave the studio setup alone. Right? You can bring in your other things on top of this. And so you want to use this as the starting point for both scenes. So that this is, additionally, I've also set up all the boxes you need to check to make it look nice in the viewport. This Windows button. Now again, I have a lot of files open right now. If you hit Window, all of the Cinema 4D files you have open are listed at the bottom here. This is not totally obvious. Like if you hit Control N while you're working, you'll make a new file, and everything that you're working on goes away. And sometimes people panic because they think they lost everything they were working on. You didn't lose it. You can have multiple files open, and this is how you switch back and forth between them. You can click over there and come back to it. And so for instance, let's get that stuff that I just made. I'll go ahead and Control C, come over to this one, and Control V. And paste that stuff. And let's get rid of this cube for now. There we go. And so it looks pretty. It's got lighting. Everything has shadows on by default. And we can start moving things around to build a scene. And so, Michelle, what are the shortcuts for move, rotate, and scale? They're all right next to each other on the keyboard. I'll give you a hint. That's in After Effects. It's close. E-R-T. Right? So E is move, R is rotate, T is scale. And so we can set up our scenes using those tools to move things around. So on and so forth. But allow me to show you some other tools that work particularly well for this type of work. Up here, there are a couple tools if you hold down that button. One of them is the Place tool. So the Place tool is really good for doing this kind of work. What does the Place tool do? Watch this. You see what's happening? So it's kind of dropping it down onto whatever the first surface is. If I drag over the floor, it sits flat to the floor. If I drag over the bench, you see that it drops it down exactly to those different rungs of the bench. So it's kind of shooting a ray down and figuring out where this object should sit. Right? And that's this tool right here. This is the place tool. And then this, if you grab that little disc there, that rotates it. If you grab the square, you can scale it. And so it's kind of like an all-in-one, move, scale, rotate. But this kind of thing where it sits down onto something, this is really good for this kind of scene construction, right? Where you have like stuff that's sitting on other stuff, there's gravity, all that kind of thing. And so this works particularly well for this type of work. All right, say for instance, what should we have on the bench? How about glasses? Someone forgot their glasses. And so I'll double click on the glasses. The other nice thing about the Access browser is everything is built to scale. And so we see that, just automatically bringing everything in, it all looks like it's the right size. Right? So that's also nice. We come in here, we can grab the glasses. I'll just, with the place tool, I'm able to just drag them right up there and they sit right on the bench. So you can appreciate how quick that is. So Michelle, this is not on these yet because we don't have 24, right? And so on your home computer, this will be on it. So why don't you come over with Anna and so you can see exactly what's going on there. So this is cool, huh? Right? Because it would be, you realize how, like, just to put the glasses on the bench, you got to move over, move up, move down, get them all in there, right? But this place tool automatically shoots down. It's a pretty easy way to put things in there like this. All right, so everyone give that a shot. Open up the template, put some stuff in there, and then put some stuff on other stuff. Okay, great, chat. So open up the template that I was going over there. Yes, I did fix that. Who are you, GHZ dude? Gigahertz dude? Courtney says, oh, thank God. I thought we had to make everything. I got nervous. Yes, Courtney, I expect you to learn 3D modeling in a week. No, there's a whole bunch of stuff in there. It's great. Makes it really easy to sort of very easily sketch out some ideas. Is there a way we could have plugged one of the other mice, you guys? Are the mice hardwired in? Oh, they're not. Here we go. We're about to change your world. Oh, you don't have a USB port. Oh my gosh.
Anna, I have a spare one if you want it. I have a spare like USB port, but like the well, it's not with me right now, it's at home, but I have like a spare for the MacBook, and so you can have like 4 USB.
Oh, like regular, like USB ports?
Yeah, just like a little port.
Yeah. Remember Fabio? He has one of those that he puts in his MacBook.
I can bring it in on Monday if you like. Yeah, thank you. Okay.
I mean, I don't have a USB to whatever converter. So chat, go ahead and bring some stuff into your scenes and then post it on Slack. Oh, it's Max. Okay. Max is gigahertz, dude. Look at this. We got 5 people on the stream. Woo! Christine, did you say what your favorite pizza is?
No. Probably margarita pizza as well.
Yeah. When I lived in New York, there was this amazing pizza by the Slice place that did like a lasagna pizza, which is pretty much all the ingredients of lasagna on top of a pizza. So it was like huge dollop of ricotta cheese and ground beef and more cheese. It was really good, but it's not the kind of thing you eat if you want to, have a long life. It was.
I was gonna say that also sounds like a massive stomachache.
Yeah. It was, no one was really happy after they had it, but it tasted pretty good.
As long as during you're happy, then that's all that matters.
Class is this?
This is ART 184, the animation class.
And you're Professor?
Casey, Farina.
Oh, I'm supposed to talk to you. My name's Eric Luthi. I'm an adjunct here. I
Oh,
teach in the
okay.
English department. I have a connection, a gentleman who's putting together a 26 episodes for National Geographic.
Mm-hmm.
And they're looking for somebody, preferably new and starting out, who can do some augmented reality for their episodes. It's
Like in the TV episode?
yes, and so we're doing they're going to do a story, say, about manatees. Well, then they want a little icon that when you click on, comes up and gives you a small animated
I heard you're giving out pizza.
story on the manatees.
Okay.
I'll find out if it's something that you might want to recommend somebody to me. I'll find out more. I don't know a whole lot about it yet. I was just assigned to figure out who to contact.
Yeah, send me an email with some more info. And
Farina?
yeah, so I'm just.
Oh yeah, I'll remember it.
Yeah, Casey Farina
Yeah.
at Casey.Farina GCC AZ.
I will send you an email. I'll give you all the information I can, and figure out what roles everybody's going to play. So
Okay.
I'm probably going to be writing part of it, but they're small, they're short episodes, so
Okay.
7-minute episodes maybe.
Okay. Let's talk about it.
Oh wow, look at this. Which animation course is this?
This is the intro to the animation.
Oh, okay.
We use Cinema 4D to make 3D stuff.
Which one of the classes on? Well, it's always been my list of things to take, so you may
Cool.
see me in one of your classes one of these days.
All right, no problem. What was
Thank
your name
you.
again?
Eric Luthi, L-U-T-H,
Eric Luthi.
yeah.
Okay.
You'll
Thank you,
get
Eric.
my email.
Okay, great. Okay, good. You start downloading trees. Let's talk about trees. People usually want to put trees in there, but let's talk about trees. If you come in here, so trees, if you think about the shape, can be big, complex shapes. And if we come over here to, is it under trees or what is it under? Foliage, plants. Here we are. If you're doing outside scenes, right, chances are you're doing something where there might be a lot of trees. And let's look at 2 trees here. Like here's one. I'll bring this one in. And then here, here's another one. And like I said, everything is to scale. So this giant tree here. So we have this tree, this European ash, apparently. It's huge and super detailed, right? You can see it's got a lot of detail. It's a lot of polygons there. And then we have this one, this fir tree. It's a little bit smaller. But this is what is called, I would write down in my notes, this is a billboard. So a lot of times, like say you want to do a forest or something like that, it's going to have a lot of trees. And it would be too much for the computer to render to make them all look like the nice tree here, right? It would just be way, way, way too much. And so the billboard is a flat picture of the tree, but the picture always turns towards the camera. So it's a flat 2D thing that's designed to try and trick you into thinking it's a 3D thing, right? So you guys were just trying to rotate it, right? Yeah, okay, so see how I move the camera, but the tree still looks the same. But it's a flat tree. The thing that's doing that is this camera tag. If you put that on an object, that means always face towards the camera. Watch me delete that and I'll show you what happens. Now, if I rotate, I can see this is actually just a cutout. So you would want to use this in the background of trees maybe far away or trees up on a mountain, things like that, where you not going to have that much detail to it and it's far away and it might be kind of small, right? Whereas this other tree would be something that you would use in the foreground as like something that would have a lot of detail. When you have an object like that, a high detail object and then another object with less detail, it's sometimes called the hero object, right? So this would be like your hero tree, and the other tree would be not a hero, right? So this is a billboard tree. So when you look at the tree menu, you can see that all the billboard trees are together. They are here under cutouts. All the trees below that are real trees, or real trees, real fake digital trees. They're trees that are just actual 3D models. And this allows me to talk about something else here. The other tool that's great, I'm going to go ahead and get some kind of like a grass or something. Here, I'll get this one. There we go. It's like a marshy, grassy element. This ribwort plantain. So this is pretty nice by itself, but it'd be cool to have more of these, right? And so the two new tools that we're going to be using here, the one we just used, the place, right, which allows you to put things on top of other objects, and the scatter, which is really cool. It allows you essentially to be able to paint in objects. So here, I'm going to make sure that I keep this grass selected. Come over here. I'm going to turn off my tree for a second. Give myself a little bit more resources. And I'm going to click and hold on the place tool. And the second one is the scatter pen. And so I'm going to grab that. With this selected, now I can click and drag. Mine's a little bit slow because I'm doing the streaming and everything as well, to paint in more of these grass elements. Hopefully it doesn't crash. There we go. Yours should run a little bit smoother than mine right now. And say we wanted to add some variation. If you look at the scatter pen options at the bottom, there's something where you could even vary the size. So I could say the max size should be 150, the minimum size should be 70. And so now when I paint, it's like it's a brush, right? You guys have all done this with like Photoshop brushes or Illustrator brushes or any program, right? Except now it's objects. You're able to paint in this variety of objects, and let's turn the radius way down. Makes sense, right? And it's painting whatever I currently have selected. So if I made something else, like one of these, and have that selected, still keep the scatter pen tool, then I should be able to make some of those. There we go. Yours will be more responsive. Mine's a little slowed down right now. So give that a shot. Scatter pen. There's no pizza in the asset browser. Oh, Max, you have Gigahertz Dude on your name in Slack? Is that like, do you have like a YouTube channel about gigahertz? How do I get to your channel? Is it Minecraft? Oh, Half-Life, Minecraft. Cool. That's Max, I guess. You guys able to make some scatter pen? Yeah? Cool. So you can vary the size, right? You click on scatter pen. Scroll down to the bottom. So here you can say, you can make it large, larger, and small, small. So you can make it 60% and 150. Then when you draw, you'll get a variety of sizes. Yeah, there's pizza here tonight, live stream. You guys are missing out. How do you change the template from orthographic view back to default? I'm not quite sure what you mean, Ron. I mean, if you go into these views, this button here will switch back and forth between that view and all of them. If you press the middle mouse button, that'll toggle back and forth between whichever view you have selected and all 4 views, or whichever view your mouse is over and all the other views. I think that might get you back to where you need. And there's really no pizza in the asset browser? Nope, they just have natural foods. Oh, cool. So the objects we've used up until now have been pretty straightforward, right? We sort of bring the object in, you move it to where you want, and you're good, right? Some of the objects are way more complicated. They have other parameters per object that change things. One of them appears to be the caret, surprisingly, right? So let me go ahead and scale this caret to giant caret. There we go. So we can see what's going on with this caret. And so if I select the caret, how did I know the caret might have more things going on? This tag right here. This is the, and I'm not spelling this wrong, it's spelled espresso. Right, so that's the name for the Cinema 4D scripting language. Not espresso, espresso, it starts with an X. There's a bunch of things in Cinema 4D that are named after coffee. And so the espresso is scripting, and so here with the caret selected, I went over to user data, right? Up until now, I told you guys to look at the object menu. That's usually where most of the stuff is. When you design your own objects, a lot of the functionality ends up in user data. And so here, you can see that there's actually all of these parameters to vary the appearance of a caret. Geez, look at this. So distortion intensity. So is this more or less bumpy? Did you get this caret at the grocery store or at the farmer's market? Here's the distortion size. Different distortions of the caret. The leave length. There we go. Width. leaf scale. Cool. A bunch of like really cool caret parameters. If I rotate it, can I then use the place tool? I'm not sure. Let me see. If I do this, and then I do this, no, it snaps back to its orientation. Like another object is the clock. You should see that there's the clock, and if we unfold, if you unfold the object, you can start to see the different parts. Here we have a clock rig, and so you could, let's bring this up a little bit. Oops, let's get the whole clock when we do it. So in general, not clicking on the object here, but selecting it there, especially for multi-part objects. There we go. And so now with this, I could come into clock rig. So I can dial in the time on this. Even the second hand. Does that make sense? So you guys try a different fruit or vegetable. Does it also have stuff under user data? I mean, I haven't used everything in that. You should be going, okay, you got a G-force card in there.
It's my girlfriend. She got it in 2016. So it's a little on the older side.
So the if it's running a little bit slow, we want it to look pretty, but Shift V, right? So all of the viewport settings are in Shift, and then V gets you to the viewport settings. And so the part of the reason it looks pretty is because I turned on a bunch of stuff so that it's fun to work with. However, if it's a little too slow, you can Shift V and go to Effects, and just here's all the stuff I turned on. You can just sort of do the global toggle here and turn that off, and there we go. You see we took a hit visually, but it should be a little snappier for you, right? And then when it comes time to render, you just come back to this menu and turn on the pretty stuff again, and then go ahead and render, right? But that should help you work a little faster. So Fabio went and got his own pizza during. Is it going good? Okay. Okay, cool. In the assignment here, I've got 2 of these. PBS made a bunch of shorts on different art topics. What is this? The art assignment. On surrealism, this sort of very, very, very dense, super fast history / introduction to different art topics. And so the previous one is on realism. This one's on surrealism. This is a really great, just quick introduction to surrealism.
Melting bowler hats, peculiar household objects, dream sequences, but also uncanny incidents, dorm room posters, more dream sequences, and according to Merriam-Webster, the year 2016. The word surrealism has become a catch-all for the bizarre, the irrational, the hallucinatory. But when it emerged in Europe during the tenuous, turbulent years following World War I and leading up to World War II, surrealism positioned itself not as an escape from life, but as a revolutionary force within it, a movement aimed at the wholesale liberation of the individual, aesthetic as well as political, literary as well as visual, originating in Paris but ultimately international, freed from the constraints of a singular style or medium, yet driven by a charismatic leader. Surrealism was ambitious, contradictory, and complex, and it has a history you might not guess from how the word is used today. This is the case for surrealism. The term surrealism first appeared in the writings of French poet Guillaume Apollinaire, who used it in 1917 to describe Jean Cocteau's ballet Parade and his own play The Breast of Tiresias. For Apollinaire, surrealism meant the fruits of the human imagination freed from the task of imitating nature. Its roots lay in the ethos of Romanticism, and eccentric 19th century figures like the symbolist fantasist Gustave Moreau, the self-taught artist and customs agent Henri Rousseau, the disquieting visionary Arnold Böcklin, and writers like Edgar Allan Poe. Surrealism also emerged out of the riotous spirit of Dada, a movement originating in Zurich and Berlin, which sought to upend artistic traditions and disrupt the conventionality of modern life, weaponizing nonsense against the institutions that had brought about the catastrophe that was World War I. Yet the Surrealists were after not just disrupting the world order through nonsense, but reinventing it through experimental tactics. The first of these is automatism, or involuntary unwilled action. In 1924, a young poet named André Breton published the Surrealist Manifesto, defining surrealism as psychic automatism in its pure state, dictated by thought in the absence of any control exercised by reason, exempt from any aesthetic or moral concern. Breton had been experimenting with this pure state since 1919, when he co-authored a book-length stream of consciousness poem called The Magnetic Fields. Breton's automatism is based on the work of Sigmund Freud, who theorized that human subjects are divided between our conscious minds, dominated by reason and restrained by social manners, and the unconscious, our hidden reservoir of instincts, desires, and unprocessed experiences that our conscious mind works hard to repress. To unleash the unconscious, Surrealists did things like transcribing dreams and recording trance states under the auspices of their Bureau of Surrealist Research. The Surrealists insisted that our repression was not just psychic, but social, and that liberating the unconscious would have collective, politically revolutionary consequences. Transform the world, said Marx. Change life, said Rilke. For us, it's one and the same, Breton wrote. Surrealist magazines were filled with dream accounts, stream of consciousness writings, automatic drawing exercises, even rapid-fire questionnaires, all serving to unleash the unconscious by circumventing the control of the conscious mind. One of the first surrealist films, made by Germaine Dulac and Antonin Artaud, explored the consciousness of a clergyman afflicted with impure thoughts. It was advertised as a dream on the screen, and set up a parallel between films and dreams, both being spaces of fantasy and automatized imagination. The Surrealists engaged in chance operations in pursuit of automatism, often outsourcing creative control to their materials. André Masson poured sand over skeins of glue to produce turbulent landscapes or mythological beasts. Man Ray illuminated objects on light-sensitive paper to create unpredictable compositions from their shadows. Others employed frottage or rubbings, brûlage or the burning of photographic negatives, and decalcomania, in each case surrendering control to the process and aspiring to what Breton called the marvelous, or that part of the self that lies beyond the reach of reason. They also outsourced creative control to each other, playing literary and drawing games, such as the famous Exquisite Corpse, where the final poem or image was the product of their collective imagination. Chance, for the Surrealists, also meant long directionless walks recorded in the novels Paris Peasant and Nadja. It included chance encounters with so-called found objects, such as the ones Breton described seeing in flea markets, which he claimed could resolve both psychological disturbances and artistic blocks. The famous line of the poet the Comte de Lautréamont, as beautiful as the chance encounter of a sewing machine and an umbrella on an operating table, became a kind of catchphrase for the movement, encapsulating its pursuit of the unexpected. Many of these found objects made their way into Surrealist work in the 1930s, arranged in compositions that resembled reliquaries or mysterious erotic contraptions, seeking the marvelous through the unexpected juxtaposition of objects. Merritt Oppenheim, shown here posing for Man Ray, created one of the most enduringly evocative surrealist objects. It was inspired by a conversation with Picasso and Dora Maar at a cafe, where Picasso admired Oppenheim's fur bracelet and remarked that one could cover anything with fur. She replied, so the story goes, even this cup and saucer. And then she brought this object into being. Found objects could be images, too. In the collage books of the German artist Max Ernst, images clipped from pamphlets and ads populate his narratives with chimera, or swim up through layers of gouache like steeping scraps of childhood memories. Other works include forms of ethnographic photographs, such as the Concombois corn silo that Ernst transformed into part elephant, part war machine. A photograph of an African village turned on its side and misinterpreted as an image of a Picasso portrait catalyzed Salvador Dali's so-called paranoid critical method, a spontaneous method of irrational knowledge based on the critical and systematic objectivity of the associations and interpretations of delirious phenomena. Or in other words, make a science of your madness? Like other avant-gardes before it, Surrealism drew inspiration from non-Western or so-called primitive cultures, which for them provided an alternative set of aesthetic and social values. Surrealist exhibitions often incorporated objects from other cultures, alongside their own inventions. But for the Surrealists, these cultures were not simply a timeless other. They identified their movement as anti-colonialist and anti-imperialist, mounting an anti-colonial exhibition and publishing pamphlets to protest the racist and imperial presumptions of the 1931 colonial exhibition in Paris. The Surrealist interest in the uncanny is a key ingredient in the persistence of and why we just can't forget many of these images. Freud explained it as something that seems both familiar and strange at the same time. For the Surrealists, this meant combining ordinary things in extraordinary ways, but it also meant the appearance of ghosts, masks, robots, and dolls. These were doubles for the living, human-like but not human. It also meant this pipe, which may look like a pipe, but it's also not a pipe. It's a double or a depiction of a pipe. Photography, which can itself be seen as a process of doubling, was especially good at generating the uncanny effect. It could be manipulated with multiple exposures and infinitely reproduced. Claude Cahun's photos often engaged in uncanny doubling, while also playing on the performance and fluidity of identity, often in collaboration with her partner, Marcel Moore. This practice would prove handy during the forthcoming war, when they disguised themselves to sneak into German gatherings and distribute anti-Nazi propaganda.
All right, so let's stop it there for a second. A lot of super dense, a lot of information there, but a lot of these techniques, I think, are really interesting in this context, in that it's much easier to sort of experiment with these kind of things given this digital realm. So, for instance, the one thing I would encourage you to do in your Surrealist one is experiment with size. Right, so I mean, we already got this kind of going on here. We got this kind of weird large carrot, and you can do things here where, I mean, there's a lot of going on here. If we make a carrot this big, you brings a lot of things into question, and you go, now there's some much more. There's a lot more to talk about here. Like, are all the other things tiny, or is this carrot just this big? There's a lot of give and take here on these types of things. The people in the asset browser, it's another fun place to play with scale. And so if you look at the humans folder, there's humans of different qualities here. So like the trees, there's some that are just silhouettes. There's some that are, cutouts. There's some that are people that are just frozen, so they're not posable. They're just one. There we go. And so here, for instance, if I went in with the place tool, right, this is already getting a little stranger. So you can do a lot of things that are not as easily available in a photography studio, right? Especially in terms of the scale, right? If you wanted to have a large carrot, how would you build such a thing? A lot of that kind of stuff. Let's look at the 3D people. So in my one surreal I handed off to you, there's some of the people that are posable. So for instance, this Android-ish looking bot, if we bring this forward, Here, if we unfold, for things that have multiple parts that move, in general, you're looking for the controls. And they've made it easier here. You see how mesh is grayed out? So it kind of locked it. So you can't go in there and mess with this. You can only grab the parts that are actually controllable. And so this is like what we did with the drawing figure that's in the primitive menu. All the different parts are here and they can all be rotated. And so for instance, I'm going to come in here and grab the thighs, try and have this android sit down here, here. Right, so I'm grabbing thigh, rotate, and coming down to the knee, rotating. And then if I grab the whole thing, make sure I grab the caret over here in the object menu. There we go. So all the parts come along. Same with the clock. Click on it over here. Right, so it opens up this whole world of experimentation, which is not easy to do otherwise. A lot of really interesting things. Let's see what the chat's saying. Yeah, the asset browser is in S24, so you need to make sure you're opening up S24, not S23, Courtney. So scale. You can play with scale in a real interesting way, which is not as easy to do in other places. What were the other ones? Oh, the fur-covered cup and saucer. In addition to objects, there's a whole library of materials. And so again, we can play with things in this way, which is interesting. So for instance, here under materials, let's go to maybe fabric, right? And you could do something, let's say blanket or plaid here. This is a flannel. Let's make a flannel bench. So in the bench, Park Studio bench, I'm going to look at where the materials are. And so if I put a different material over those materials, I'll cover it up. And so I can bring this one, double click on it first. Nope, that one's not available. Here, carpet. And you can control drag here as well. You have a carpet bench. Right, so this type of experimentation is available as well. For instance, what if the carrot was made of gold? And so let's come up here to the carrot, open it up and drill down to where's the carrot material? Here. And let's bring in this gold and drag that over to the carrot. Now, your mileage may vary. This may not always work out so well, depending on the pattern and a bunch of other issues with some of it. But let's say, yeah, this metal. Let's try that on our. So here it's locked up. So I have to go to layers and unlock it. And now I could probably bring something like this over. There we go. Wow, that's cooler than I had imagined. See how we can play with things on both of those levels, right? We have all this scaling, we have all these objects. We can also assign these materials to really call things into question. And I'm going to go ahead and save this one. Two of our other points, the idea of taking a bunch of things and mixing them together, this idea of collage, right? Now we have a whole bunch of toys in the toy box, and then also the idea of chance operations. So I'm going to say Control N to make a new file. Make sure I'm over here, not in the asset browser. I'll close this off. There we go. So just a new blank file. Remember, when you close something, they all end up here in the bottom of the Windows tab. This is where all of the, I didn't close the other one, it's just not showing. So here's the top level one. So this object here is your friend for repetition. This is the cloner. Allows you to clone objects. So for instance, I'm going to make one of these, and then I'm going to grab, what should we search for? Name an object. Pants?
Yeah, I think we have it. Or pants.
Pan. There we go. And I'm going to get some variety here. I have a couple pans. Here's my cloner. If I put a pan as a child of the cloner, you see it makes a grid of pans. And so I'm able to select the cloner, and if you're not sure which tab to go to, which one should you look at first? Object. Object tab is usually where the action is. So let's stick on the object. And so here, this is probably the most important, the mode of the cloner. The default mode is to make a grid. You can size up the grid, move things closer together, kind of like so. There we go. And now if I wanted to reformulate the grid, I could do this to start creating a field of pans here. So the object tab in the cloner is super important. And the other thing you definitely want to write down is that you want to change instance, which is right here. Change this to multi-instance. It should really be the default, but it's not. Why? Multi-instance is a faster way of rendering these and allows you to really explore some larger possibilities without really much slowdown, right? And so I'm able to create thousands of pans. You can have multiple things in the cloner, right? So if I put 2 pans in there, now I get this grid of pans. One of the interesting things is instead of one pan, the other pan, one pan, the other pan, you can go from iterate to random. I have like a random set of pans as far as the order of them. And it could even be a 3-dimensional grid. It would just slow down. Like it would just stop being very responsive. So yeah, just definitely, as soon as you turn it on, definitely change it to multi-instance. Just a faster way of doing it. And even with that, the computer's usually pretty good, but my computer's also streaming, and I also have After Effects open. That's never good. So a bunch of things there. So try that. Give yourself a new clean file, make a cloner, put something in there, and try and make some repeats. Oh, to not move the backdrop, Max? Yeah, so you wouldn't search for the backdrop. It's here in the studio. You just need to put the protection tag not on the object from the object browser, just in the studio, if you want to make sure you don't move the backdrop. So here I'll unfold the studio. Here's the studio backdrop. And so I could just control drag this protection tag from the camera to the studio to make sure I don't click and move on that. That's a good idea. So you see how this opens up all these possibilities for experimentation that aren't usually available, or at least in this way. Okay, so you're in radial mode, and you want the grid. You gotta go to grid mode. Yeah. Let's talk about radial mode. Radial mode is fun. I use that in my surreal example. And so if I take the cloner and go to radial mode, it'll clone things in a circle. Right? And so I can turn them up, spread it out. Here you can start to do some things like if I start to put too many in there, they really start to stop looking like pans, and now I have some sort of more abstract ring. I could make multiple ones of these. And so here's another one. Let me bring this in a little bit. Right, and that's it. If I select the transform, I can change the size of the pans. There we go. You can really maybe build a pattern and then break a pattern. Right, so I have a tennis ball. What if one of them had a tennis ball in it? Maybe. There we go. Mine's frozen. Let's wait for it to chill out for a second. I have way too many things open. I'm gonna close After Effects. There we go. Cool, let's do one more with sort of random cloud placement. So kind of like scatter. I'm just gonna grab this tennis ball. Or maybe something else. Let's go here. So I'm gonna make a cloner, and I'm also going to make a sphere, like so. And then I'm going to click these two circles right here. This is show in render and show in editor. And if they both are red, the object will be invisible, but it's still on, it's still checked, it's still being computed. And what I can do in the cloner, maybe the coolest mode of the cloner, all the shapes are fine, but if you go into object mode, it'll clone one object onto another object. And so I'm going to clone stuff onto this sphere. You got to drag the sphere down from here into this object field. Sometimes in Cinema 4D, when objects are connected, there'll be a field like this. You have to drag the object down into the field. Let's clone something onto that invisible sphere. How about party hats? And so I can do that. In order to do that, I need to make the party hat a child of the cloner. So I click and drag the party hat over the cloner, wait till the arrow is pointing down and let go. And there we go. Now you can see I've got party hats all on the surface of the sphere. I'm going to do the same thing like I said. I'm going to switch it to multi-instance. And I can make a lot of party hats. Sort of randomly places them onto the surface of the sphere. So if you grab the cloner and press T, I can sort of scale these individual clones, right? And now, right, the identity of it as party hat starts to break down. Same kind of thing. So using random placement, as a way to sort of cast or broadcast objects all over the surface of something else. It doesn't have to be a sphere. It could be any other piece of geometry. If we have a cube here instead of a sphere, again, I make it invisible, and then I just tell the cloner, clone onto this cube instead. Here. There we go. Gets everything into a cube. I grab these and hit T. I can scale them down a little bit, or up. And if I change the cube in any way, everything comes along for the ride. And you don't have to make the cube invisible. So for instance here, the cube could be visible. Assign some other material to the cube. You guys get the idea. Cool? Excited? So the Cinema 4D party, that's an animation. The part of the project is changing some of the animation in that template. The surreal and the real, these are just going to be stills. You just need to render one frame. Okay? Sound good? All right. Go ahead and save what you got. Let's go ahead and call it for the evening. any questions from you guys on the chat? It's weird because the chat's delayed, so they won't hear me say that for a few minutes, but I think the chat goes through right away.
How far back is it?
It seems to get further as I go on, right? And there I am doing the radial corner, so it's a couple minutes. That's fine. Anybody want some more pizza?
I'll take a slice for you, I guess.
Okay. All right, I've got to